Hey guys! Welcome back to Sleeping Stone Whispers. Today, we're diving into the quiet world of Victorian nurseries, where children were seen but never heard, nannies ruled the roost, and affection was measured in polite distance. It's a fascinating journey into history that's boring, in the most relaxing way, perfect for bedtime listening. So grab a cozy blanket, settle in, and if you enjoy this journey through time, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more sleepy stories. The Victorian home was not merely a dwelling, it was a carefully constructed stage upon which the dramas of family life were performed with precision and decorum. Every room had its purpose, every piece of furniture its place, and every family member their prescribed role. For children, the experience of domesticity was far more structured than the casual homes of today. Order was paramount, and affection, while present, was secondary, measured, and restrained. In a typical middle or upper-class home, children did not roam freely. Their movements were carefully guided by rules and schedules devised to instill discipline, morality, and social poise. The household itself was a microcosm of hierarchy. Parents presided over the family, servants maintained the smooth functioning of the house, and the nursery, the domain of the children, was governed almost entirely by nannies and governesses. These women wielded remarkable authority, for it was their duty to train young minds and bodies to the standards of proper Victorian society. Furniture in the nursery was arranged with methodical care. Beds were made with military precision, and toys, when allowed, were displayed neatly rather than scattered. Children learned early that their environment was to be respected and that chaos was unacceptable. Even the smallest details, the placement of a toy, the folding of a sheet, or the alignment of a chair, were lessons in discipline. Parents, particularly mothers, were often distant figures in daily life. They communicated affection through letters or brief gestures rather than hugs or play. A note left on a bedside table, a soft "good night," or a carefully chosen gift served as a substitute for physical warmth. The emotional bond existed, but it was quiet and contained, often invisible to the casual observer. Victorian society prized restraint, and the home was a reflection of this value. Love was expressed in controlled forms, through attentiveness to schedules, proper feeding, and the provision of education, rather than through exuberant displays of emotion. Daily life followed a rigid timetable. Breakfast, lessons, playtime, and meals were all carefully scheduled. The children's day was a reflection of the household's order. Punctuality, neatness, and propriety were valued above spontaneity or childish whim. Even play was considered an opportunity for moral or educational instruction. Games were selected not for entertainment alone but for their ability to teach patience, sharing, and decorum. The ideal Victorian home also emphasized aesthetics and propriety. Cleanliness was not merely practical but moral. Every surface gleamed, every garment was spotless, and every action contributed to the impression of a well-run household. Children were taught that their behavior reflected on the entire family. Misbehavior or sloppiness was a mark not just against themselves, but against the home itself. Despite the rigidity, there was care behind the order. Nannies and governesses often devoted long hours to observing, instructing, and protecting the children. Fathers and mothers, though distant, were concerned for the moral and physical welfare of their offspring. The Victorian home, then, was not cold in the sense of neglect. It was an environment in which affection was woven into the fabric of routine, hidden in the folds of order, discipline, and meticulous care. Ultimately, the ideal Victorian home placed order before affection, believing that structure, discipline, and propriety were the foundations upon which character and morality would be built. Children learned to navigate a world of rules and expectations, preparing them to fulfill their roles in society with poise and decorum. And while modern readers may find such a life rigid or even joyless, there was a subtle and pervasive love present in every rule, schedule, and careful instruction, a silent devotion that formed the backbone of the Victorian nursery. In a Victorian household, the nursery was not a simple room where children played and slept, it was a kingdom ruled by nannies. These women held remarkable authority, second only to the parents, and in many ways, they were the true overseers of childhood. Within the walls of the nursery, the nannies were monarchs, governing with a combination of discipline, experience, and sometimes quiet affection. The hierarchy within the nursery was clear and strictly enforced. At the top stood the head nanny, often an experienced woman who had spent years in child care and had mastered the art of controlling both children and junior staff. She was responsible for the overall welfare, education, and behavior of the children, ensuring that every routine was observed and every rule followed. Junior nannies and nursery maids worked under her supervision, carrying out specific duties such as feeding, dressing, or cleaning, but ultimate authority always resided with the head nanny. Children quickly learned to recognize and respect this hierarchy. To disobey the head nanny was to risk correction, often in subtle but effective ways, a raised eyebrow, a firm word, or a temporarily withheld privilege. Yet within these constraints, children also found guidance, protection, and even affection, carefully measured and expressed. The nanny's love was quiet, almost imperceptible, yet it formed a crucial part of a child's early world. Discipline was a defining characteristic of the nursery. Nannies were responsible for instilling manners, ensuring proper behavior, and correcting faults. A mispronounced word, a messy appearance, or an unseemly display of emotion might be met with gentle scolding, or, in some cases, a more formal punishment. The goal was not cruelty but the shaping of character, the preparation of children to become polite, well-mannered adults. The nanny's influence extended far beyond the practicalities of feeding and bathing. She oversaw education, ensuring that lessons were completed and that children practiced reading, writing, and arithmetic. She monitored playtime, selecting activities that were deemed appropriate and instructive. Even in moments of leisure, the presence of the nanny reminded children that every action was observed and evaluated. Parents, particularly mothers, often relied heavily on these women. Letters of instruction might detail exactly how a child should be dressed, what lessons should be completed, and which virtues should be emphasized. Mothers trusted their nannies to enforce these instructions, acting as the eyes, ears, and sometimes the conscience of the household. In many ways, the nanny was a surrogate parent, a figure of authority who balanced care with discipline. This power structure also influenced sibling relationships. Nannies often mediated conflicts, ensured fairness in attention and instruction, and taught children to navigate both hierarchy and etiquette. The lessons learned under a nanny's guidance were subtle but enduring: respect for authority, patience, self-control, and the understanding that love could exist even within rules and restrictions. Ultimately, the nursery hierarchy reflected the broader Victorian society, a world where order, duty, and structure were prized above spontaneity and chaos. Nannies were the monarchs of this small kingdom, wielding authority with calm confidence, shaping the daily lives and moral development of the children under their care. Behind the strict routines and formal discipline lay quiet devotion, a reminder that even in a world governed by rules, care and affection found their subtle place. In the ideal Victorian household, mothers were often absent from the daily minutiae of their children's lives. Society placed enormous emphasis on a mother's role as a moral and social guide, yet the practice of child-rearing frequently fell to nannies and governesses. This absence was not a sign of neglect but of decorum. A mother's affection was expressed indirectly, measured by propriety rather than intimacy. Letters became one of the primary methods by which mothers maintained connection with their children. A neatly penned note might accompany a small gift, offering guidance, gentle reprimand, or encouragement. These letters were formal yet affectionate, and they conveyed lessons in morality, etiquette, and duty. The handwriting itself, elegant and precise, reflected the care taken in both message and presentation. A child could read and reread these notes, savoring the comfort of maternal attention, even if it was distant and mediated by pen and paper. The absence of daily physical affection was deliberate. Mothers rarely sang lullabies, rocked children to sleep, or engaged in casual play. Such interactions were often left to the nanny, whose role combined both authority and nurturance. The mother's love, quiet and contained, existed in scheduled visits, in carefully chosen words, and in the oversight of her child's moral and educational upbringing. In essence, affection was filtered through structure, and warmth was expressed in measured doses. Victorian society valued the appearance of control and composure over spontaneous emotion. A mother who indulged in overt displays of sentiment was often seen as failing in her duties, while a disciplined, composed mother demonstrated care through careful attention to order and propriety. This philosophy shaped the emotional environment of the home. Children grew accustomed to love that was present but not demonstrative, expressed through guidance, expectation, and structured attention rather than touch or playful exuberance. This approach influenced children's understanding of relationships and authority. They learned early that love could exist without constant physical reassurance, that respect for parents included obedience to social norms, and that guidance could be gentle yet firm. Letters were more than mere communication, they were tools for moral and emotional education, ensuring that maternal influence was present even when physically absent. In the quiet halls of the Victorian home, then, mothers operated at a distance. Their love was real but restrained, expressed through carefully chosen words and structured oversight. Children adapted to this model of care, learning to recognize the presence of affection behind the veil of propriety. It was a world in which love was silent, measured, and ever intertwined with the expectations of society, a delicate balance between intimacy and decorum, between personal warmth and social duty. In Victorian society, physical affection was a language carefully regulated by both custom and class. For children, the experience of touch was subtle, controlled, and deliberate. Love existed, certainly, but it was often expressed in what could almost be called measured inches, a gentle hand on a shoulder, a brief brush of the cheek, a reassuring nod, never in unrestrained hugs or boisterous displays of emotion. Nannies and mothers alike were acutely aware of the social expectations surrounding touch. The nursery was a space in which boundaries were observed meticulously. A pat on the head might signal approval, a slight squeeze of the hand could offer comfort, but each gesture was small, intentional, and transitory. Children learned to interpret these signals as indicators of care, even if they were subtle or fleeting. Excessive physical contact was discouraged, particularly in higher-class households. Victorian ideals held that composure, dignity, and self-control were virtues to be cultivated from a young age. Children were instructed to sit, stand, and move with decorum, and even in moments of play, gestures of affection were minimal and formalized. Kisses on the cheek were often reserved for brief greetings or departures, not as everyday expressions of warmth. Despite this apparent restraint, there was a hidden layer of tenderness in these limited gestures. The nanny's hand, steady on a small shoulder during a lesson or while tidying toys, was a constant reassurance. A mother's letter, read aloud by a caretaker, carried emotional weight that touched the child more deeply than physical embrace might have. In a home governed by rules, these small tokens of affection were potent and meaningful. Children grew up learning to recognize the nuances of such gestures, to understand the silent language of love that existed within a structured environment. A smile, a glance, a gentle instruction, all could carry the weight of approval, comfort, and emotional support. By mastering the art of polite touch, children internalized the values of respect, patience, and decorum, while quietly feeling the care of their elders. Ultimately, in the Victorian home, affection was not absent but carefully calibrated. Love was present in disciplined routines, in small gestures, and in deliberate actions, always measured and expressed within the boundaries of propriety. Children learned early that care could be silent, structured, and consistent, and that even a tiny, deliberate touch could speak volumes in a world governed by order and restraint. In the Victorian household, meals were more than mere sustenance, they were lessons in etiquette, discipline, and social refinement. Children were expected to eat not only for nourishment but also as a demonstration of character. The family dining room was a place of order, where each movement, bite, and utterance was observed and measured against the standards of propriety. From the earliest age, children were taught to follow precise rules. They were shown how to hold cutlery correctly, how to sit with back straight and hands visible, and how to speak only when addressed. Talking with a mouth full of food, reaching across the table, or displaying impatience was considered unacceptable. Each meal became an exercise in self-control, patience, and respect for authority, values deeply ingrained in Victorian society. Nannies played a crucial role during these times, guiding children's behavior and gently correcting errors. A raised eyebrow or a softly spoken admonition could communicate disapproval without the need for harsh punishment. Sometimes, a favorite morsel was withheld as a form of instruction, reinforcing the lesson that proper behavior was rewarded while disorderly conduct carried consequences. Beyond manners, meals also provided opportunities for moral and educational instruction. Children were encouraged to discuss proper topics, often guided by the principles of virtue, religion, or family duty. Books and lessons were occasionally incorporated into conversation, ensuring that even the act of dining contributed to intellectual and moral development. Playful behavior was discouraged, and laughter, if it occurred, was subdued and carefully monitored. Food itself was prepared with exacting standards. Presentation mattered, and children were taught to appreciate the care involved in every dish. Overcooked or undercooked meals were considered mistakes, not just in taste but in discipline, teaching young learners that attention to detail and respect for labor were virtues. The ritual of dining instilled a sense of responsibility, teaching children that their actions, even at the table, reflected upon the household as a whole. In essence, Victorian meal times were microcosms of the larger household philosophy. Order, discipline, and propriety took precedence, but love and care were embedded in the attention to detail, the preparation of food, and the guidance provided by attentive caregivers. Every bite was a lesson, every table rule a reflection of societal expectation, and every subtle gesture of encouragement a hidden token of affection. In the silent spaces between instruction and observation, children learn not only manners but also the quiet, structured love that characterized their upbringing. In the Victorian household, education was not merely a matter of learning letters and numbers, it was a carefully orchestrated preparation for life. From the earliest age, children were expected to observe a strict balance between study and recreation. Play existed, of course, but it was never prioritized over lessons. Discipline, moral instruction, and intellectual development came first, and enjoyment of leisure followed only as a reward for proper diligence. The nursery often doubled as a classroom. Nannies or governesses oversaw the children's studies, teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic with precision and patience. For girls, lessons often included music, embroidery, and languages, while boys were introduced to mathematics, history, and practical sciences. Every lesson was intended to cultivate both intellect and character, instilling in children a sense of duty, attention to detail, and respect for societal norms. Lessons were scheduled with military-like exactness. The day might begin with reading and recitation, followed by arithmetic, moral instruction, and later, a brief interlude for supervised play. Free time was rare and always structured, ensuring that children never wandered into idleness. The Victorian belief was that a disciplined mind required order, repetition, and constant engagement. Only through careful study could a child grow into a respectable adult. Even the tools of education were part of the instruction. Penmanship was carefully monitored, ink carefully applied, and books handled with care. Mistakes were corrected gently but firmly, and children learned early that diligence and attentiveness were not optional. The classroom environment extended beyond mere academics. It was a miniature society in which respect for authority, self-control, and conscientiousness were cultivated daily. Play, though secondary, was designed to reinforce learning. Games that involved counting, reading, or moral lessons were favored over frivolous or noisy entertainment. Toys were few, selected for their educational or ethical value, and playtime was limited and supervised. This approach reflected a broader philosophy. Childhood was a period for preparation, not indulgence, and the pleasures of youth were secondary to the cultivation of intellect and virtue. In the Victorian view, early education was a gift as well as a responsibility. Parents and caregivers believed that every moment spent in instruction was an investment in the child's future. Behind the strict routines, the correction of errors, and the carefully structured lessons lay a subtle form of care, a quiet hope that children, through discipline and study, would develop into capable, moral, and socially respected adults. Even in the absence of overt affection, education itself became a form of love, measured, structured, and in Victorian society, clothing was far more than a matter of personal taste or comfort. It was a reflection of social standing, moral character, and discipline. Children, from infancy onward, were expected to dress according to rigid standards that mirrored adult fashion and societal expectations. The nursery, therefore, was not only a place of care and instruction but also of meticulous preparation in appearance, where every button, ribbon, and fold had its prescribed place. Infants and toddlers were often dressed in long gowns or flowing frocks, regardless of gender, until they reached the age of breeching, when boys transitioned to trousers. Even these early garments were carefully chosen, designed to be neat, modest, and socially appropriate. Fabrics were selected for durability and cleanliness, colors for propriety, and accessories for refinement. Mothers or nannies spent considerable time ensuring that every child was presentable at all times, as outward appearance was considered a reflection of inner character. For older children, fashion became even more prescriptive. Girls were dressed in layered skirts, petticoats, and sometimes corsets or waist cinchers, though the latter were lighter and far less restrictive than adult versions. Boys wore stiff collars, jackets, and knee-length trousers, complete with stockings and polished shoes. Every item of clothing was a lesson in discipline: how to dress neatly, how to handle delicate fabrics, and how to maintain composure while wearing sometimes uncomfortable garments. Nannies and governesses played a central role in enforcing the dress code. Morning routines often involved careful dressing, brushing hair into tidy styles, and arranging ribbons, bows, or hats with precision. Mistakes in attire could result in gentle correction, as children were taught that their clothing was a reflection of both personal responsibility and family reputation. Even small deviations from the standard, crooked collars, untied ribbons, or messy shoes, were noticed and addressed promptly. Clothing also served as a tool of moral education. Modesty, decorum, and respectability were emphasized through fabric, cut, and fit. Extravagance or ostentation was discouraged, while simplicity combined with neatness was praised. Children learned early that proper attire was not merely a preference but a reflection of discipline, obedience, and societal expectation. Despite the rigidity, there was a subtle layer of care in these daily rituals. Dressing a child meticulously, adjusting a ribbon, or smoothing a crease was both an act of instruction and an expression of quiet affection. Parents and caregivers demonstrated concern for the child's appearance, health, and comfort through these routines, embedding care into discipline. Ultimately, the Victorian dress code taught children that order, propriety, and presentation were inseparable from character and social responsibility. Through layers of clothing, careful grooming, and adherence to strict fashion standards, children internalized lessons of discipline, respect, and self-awareness, preparing them for a society that valued poise, restraint, and controlled expression, all while hiding love and care behind buttons, bows, and neatly folded hems. Morning in a Victorian household was not merely the start of a day, it was the beginning of a carefully structured exercise in discipline, hygiene, and moral cultivation. For children, waking hours were filled with ritualized tasks designed to teach self-control, attention to detail, and respect for both personal and familial standards. In the nursery, these routines were treated with utmost seriousness, as grooming was considered a reflection of character as much as cleanliness. The day typically began at a prescribed hour, with children rising promptly from neatly made beds. Nannies supervised every movement, ensuring that no moment was wasted in slumber or dawdling. Teeth were brushed with care, hair was combed into tidy styles, and faces were washed with lukewarm water, each action performed with precision. Even small deviations, such as a crooked braid or a missed tooth cleaning, could result in gentle correction, reinforcing the idea that diligence and attention were virtues to be cultivated early. Clothing followed grooming. Nannies guided children in selecting the proper attire, teaching them how to fasten buttons correctly, adjust collars, and tie ribbons. The emphasis was always on neatness, symmetry, and appropriateness. These lessons were not superficial, they reinforced the broader Victorian belief that external presentation mirrored internal character. A well-groomed child was a disciplined child, prepared for social interaction and capable of reflecting family honor. Beyond the practicalities of hygiene and dress, morning rituals included moral and intellectual preparation. Short readings, recitations, or lessons might be incorporated into the early routine, ensuring that the mind was engaged even as the body was cared for. Attention to cleanliness, order, and personal grooming became intertwined with instruction in patience, obedience, and social awareness. Every action, no matter how mundane, contributed to the cultivation of a responsible, respectable child. These routines also subtly expressed care and affection. Though the mother's presence might be minimal, the careful guidance of the nanny demonstrated concern for the child's health, appearance, and moral development. Gentle corrections, repeated demonstrations, and patient oversight conveyed attention and devotion, even within the strict framework of Victorian discipline. Children learned that love could be expressed not through indulgence but through structured care, consistent routines, and steady instruction. In essence, morning rituals were a microcosm of Victorian child-rearing philosophy. Grooming was more than hygiene, it was character building, a daily lesson in responsibility, patience, and decorum. Through these carefully ordered acts, children absorbed the principles of discipline, propriety, and quiet affection, preparing them to navigate a world that valued restraint, polish, and the subtle demonstration of care. In the Victorian household, playtime was a carefully monitored and morally guided activity. While modern children might imagine a nursery filled with rambunctious running, laughter, and unstructured games, Victorian children were more often engaged in quiet, intellectual pursuits. Play was considered a tool for education, moral instruction, and the cultivation of discipline rather than mere amusement. Books, puzzles, and carefully selected games dominated the nursery. Storybooks imparted moral lessons, teaching virtues such as honesty, patience, and respect. Puzzles and educational games encouraged logic, concentration, and fine motor skills. Even toys, when allowed, were chosen for their instructive value, promoting creativity within the confines of proper conduct. The philosophy was clear: the mind should be exercised before the body, and amusement should never supersede instruction. Outdoor play, when permitted, was equally structured. Children might take measured walks in the garden or visit public parks, but every activity was supervised, and unruly behavior was gently but firmly corrected. Running, shouting, or spontaneous games were discouraged, as such acts were viewed as distractions from moral and intellectual development. Children learned early that their behavior, even during play, reflected their upbringing and the reputation of their family. The emphasis on reading and quiet activity shaped children's imagination in subtle ways. Through books and guided play, they explored worlds of virtue, adventure, and social expectation. Nannies or governesses often read aloud, explaining proper conduct and reinforcing the lessons embedded within each story. In this environment, children absorbed not only knowledge but also the habits of attentiveness, patience, and reflection. Yet within this strict structure, affection and care remained present. The selection of books, the time spent reading, and the gentle guidance during games were expressions of a quiet devotion. Play was never neglected entirely, it was simply channeled in ways that aligned with Victorian ideals of order, propriety, and moral instruction. Children grew up understanding that learning could be enjoyable, even if it was measured, supervised, and restrained. Ultimately, the Victorian nursery transformed play into a training ground for both intellect and character. Running and noise were replaced with reading and contemplation, instruction and gentle correction replaced unrestrained amusement, and care was expressed through structured engagement rather than unbridled attention. In this silent, orderly world, children learned that their minds, like their behavior, were to be nurtured, disciplined, and prepared for the expectations of society. In the Victorian household, morality was not left to chance. Every aspect of a child's upbringing was infused with lessons on right and wrong, with religion serving as both guide and framework. The nursery, though a place of care, was also a classroom for instilling conscience, shaping character, and fostering a sense of personal and social responsibility. Children were taught from a young age to distinguish virtue from vice. Daily lessons, often guided by nannies or governesses, incorporated stories of moral courage, honesty, and duty. Picture books illustrated consequences for disobedience, exaggerating the rewards of propriety and the perils of misbehavior. Even small mistakes, such as failing to follow instructions or displaying impatience, were addressed as opportunities to cultivate self-awareness, humility, and moral reflection. Religion was central to this moral instruction. Children learned prayers, hymns, and Bible verses, not only as spiritual exercises but also as tools to instill discipline and obedience. Sundays were reserved for formal worship, reflection, and quiet contemplation, reinforcing a sense of duty to God, family, and society. This combination of spiritual and practical guidance emphasized accountability and instilled a strong internal compass. Guilt, carefully cultivated, played a role in shaping behavior. Children were made aware of the consequences of their actions, sometimes through gentle reprimands or cautionary tales, sometimes through more formal correction. While modern sensibilities might view this as harsh, in the Victorian perspective, guilt was a natural and necessary motivator, guiding children toward propriety, self-control, and moral development. Yet within this rigorous framework, care and concern were never absent. Lessons in morality were intended not to frighten but to guide. Nannies, governesses, and parents believed that by instilling a strong sense of duty and understanding of right and wrong, they were preparing children to lead responsible, respectful, and socially conscious lives. Affection was woven into this instruction, subtle and quiet, expressed through patience, attention, and the careful guidance of daily routines. Ultimately, moral instruction in the Victorian nursery was a careful balance of religion, guilt, and duty. It sought to teach children that every action carried meaning, that responsibility began in small daily tasks, and that character was built through consistent attention to virtue. Behind the strict routines, the prayers, and the gentle admonishments lay a quiet love, a desire to prepare children not only to follow rules but to understand their purpose, cultivating both conscience and compassion in a world that valued order above all. In the structured world of the Victorian household, education was not confined to classrooms or schools. It was a private matter, conducted within the quiet walls of the home under the careful supervision of tutors. These figures, often serious and methodical, shaped not only a child's intellect but their manners, speech, and bearing. A proper education was considered essential, but equally vital was the cultivation of poise, the ability to think, speak, and behave in a way that reflected refinement. The tutor arrived punctually, carrying with them an air of authority tempered by restraint. Lessons were conducted at the same time each day, the hours marked by discipline and repetition. Latin, mathematics, geography, and literature were taught with deliberate precision. There were no raised voices, no bursts of laughter, only the quiet rhythm of instruction, the scratch of a quill on paper, and the occasional murmur of correction. The room itself seemed to breathe in quiet concentration. Language was a matter of deep importance. Children were trained to speak with clarity, to pronounce each syllable correctly, and to avoid the casual speech of the lower classes. A misplaced word or unrefined tone was gently corrected, not out of cruelty, but because speech was seen as a reflection of breeding. To speak well was to embody dignity, to write neatly was to display discipline of mind. In this way, education became as much about appearance as intellect, a sign of one's place in society and one's respect for order. For many children, the tutor was both a distant guide and a silent guardian. They rarely offered affection, yet their consistency provided comfort. The steady presence of lessons gave the day structure, it created predictability in a world of rules. And though children may not have expressed fondness openly, they often carried a quiet respect for the patience and exactness of those who instructed them. Behind the surface of dry recitations and memorized texts, there was something softer. The act of teaching, explaining, correcting, repeating, contained a muted form of care. In the tutor's insistence on good posture, proper grammar, and attention to detail was the belief that these habits would shield children from the chaos of the wider world. To teach was to prepare, and to prepare was an act of love, restrained, distant, but deeply felt. Thus, the Victorian tutor stood as both instructor and symbol, a figure of learning and composure, embodying the age's faith in order and restraint. The lessons they imparted reached far beyond arithmetic or Latin conjugations. They shaped the quiet dignity that defined a generation raised in rooms of gentle correction, whispered instruction, and silent devotion. In the quiet discipline of the Victorian home, correction was not an act of anger but of duty. Every rule broken, every lapse in behavior, was believed to require not only acknowledgement but consequence. To the Victorian mind, punishment was not cruelty, it was guidance, a structured response meant to teach restraint, humility, and self-control. In this world of manners and order, the cane became both symbol and tool, a slender reminder of virtue's fragile line. Within the nursery, correction took many forms. A stern word, withdrawn privilege, or the dreaded glance of disapproval from a governess could wound far more deeply than a physical reprimand. But when the moment required more tangible discipline, the cane or the ruler was brought forth, not in fury, but in ritual. The act was measured, deliberate, and accompanied by solemn explanation. "This is for your betterment," a nanny might say softly, and the room would fall into stillness. For the Victorians, such measures were not expressions of temper, they were moral instruments. To spare discipline was, in their eyes, to neglect character. The world beyond the nursery was harsh and demanding, and so the lessons within its walls had to prepare children to meet it. The sting of the cane was brief, but its lesson was intended to last, a reminder that virtue required effort and that obedience brought peace. Yet even in these moments of severity, affection lingered quietly. The governess who delivered correction often stayed behind afterward, offering a handkerchief or a few gentle words once the tears had faded. There was an understanding, unspoken, but present, that discipline and care were not opposites, but companions. To love a child, in the Victorian sense, was to shape them, to guide them firmly towards self-mastery. And so, the cane, feared, remembered, respected, became a part of the nursery's rhythm. It hung in the corner not as a threat, but as a symbol of moral order. Few children challenged it, and fewer adults questioned its necessity. To the Victorian parent, correction was compassion expressed through control, a way of keeping chaos at bay and conscience alive. Today, such practices may seem cold or even cruel, but within their time, they were bound by care and belief, the conviction that discipline forged strength, that correction bred conscience, and that even in the quietest pain, there lay a purpose. It was a world that valued silence after tears, reflection after reprimand, and the calm return to order that followed every lesson learned. In the vast corridors and tidy nurseries of Victorian homes, siblings often grew up side by side, yet curiously apart. Bound by duty, separated by etiquette, and softened by quiet affection, their relationships were a delicate balance of companionship and restraint. Love existed, yes, but it rarely shouted. It was measured in small gestures, in shared glances across the schoolroom, or in the silent exchange of a cherished toy before bedtime. Victorian upbringing emphasized composure even between brothers and sisters. Warmth was acceptable, but exuberance was discouraged. Siblings were taught to treat one another with courtesy, to address each other formally, and to respect differences in age and gender. The eldest child often carried a sense of responsibility, serving as a model for the younger ones. Deference was expected, rivalry controlled, and emotions quietly subdued beneath layers of proper behavior. Yet, beneath this calm surface, small rivalries stirred. The competition for approval, from parents, from tutors, from nannies, was constant but rarely spoken. A perfectly recited lesson, a neatly tied ribbon, or an especially polite response could earn a rare word of praise, and every child longed for it. But affection was seldom expressed in open displays. Instead, it appeared in softer forms, a book shared, a game invented in secret, or the unspoken comfort of familiar presence in a world of rules. Moments of rebellion, though rare, held a certain sweetness. A shared giggle after bedtime, a conspiratorial whisper during lessons, these tiny acts of mischief became quiet bonds that outlasted childhood. Within the restrictions of decorum, siblings found ways to communicate affection without words. Their connection grew not through exuberance but through endurance, forged in the silent companionship of structured days. When quarrels arose, as they inevitably did, they were met not with shouting but with gentle correction. "Now, children, let us behave as proper young ladies and gentlemen," the governess would say, and harmony was restored, if only on the surface. Apologies were given with lowered eyes and steady voices, emotions folded neatly back into composure. In time, these restrained relationships ripened into lifelong fondness, the kind that needed no declaration. The bond between siblings, shaped by duty and discipline, carried the faint echo of the nursery's quiet order. It was love, Victorian in nature, polite, enduring, understated. And though the world outside might see only their formality, behind it lived years of shared whispers, silent comfort, and a companionship that asked for nothing more than presence. In the carefully ordered world of the Victorian home, childhood was never one experience but two, divided neatly by expectation. From the moment they could walk, boys and girls were dressed, spoken to, and instructed in entirely different ways, not out of cruelty, but from a deep belief that destiny itself was gendered. The nursery, though shared in space, was split in spirit, boots on one side, ribbons on the other. Boys were trained for the world beyond, a world of reason, strength, and quiet leadership. Their toys were miniature versions of adult life, wooden soldiers, model ships, and tools for exploration. They were taught to endure discomfort, to stand tall, and to conceal emotion. Tears were discouraged, hesitation gently corrected. A gentleman, they were told, must always keep his composure. Lessons in geography and arithmetic prepared them for a future in offices, the army, or public life, while games of order and conquest shaped their sense of control. Girls, meanwhile, were raised within gentler, yet equally strict, expectations. Their play centered on the home, on dolls, tea sets, and miniature cradles. They were praised for patience, grace, and careful manners. A torn dress or a raised voice was cause for correction, not because it was grave, but because it disrupted the calm image of refinement. Girls were prepared for lives of quiet influence, to manage a household, to soothe rather than lead, and to express strength through gentleness. Every gesture, every tone of voice carried meaning. Boys were taught to speak clearly and command respect, while girls were instructed to soften their words, to smile, to listen. Even lessons in writing revealed this divide: firm, upright script for boys, rounded, delicate penmanship for girls. Their very handwriting reflected society's blueprint for their futures. Yet within these rules, small rebellions stirred. A girl might envy her brother's freedom to run in the garden, while a boy might long for the warmth of the quieter games. Occasionally, they would trade toys in secret, a doll for a toy drum, a ribbon tied around a soldier's arm, small acts of shared understanding that transcended expectation. These gestures were fleeting, but they hinted at the truth that affection and curiosity often slipped past the barriers of upbringing. The adults, however, remained steadfast. They believed they were shaping order, preserving civilization through careful differentiation. To them, the boy's courage and the girl's tenderness were two halves of the same moral whole, each necessary, each defined by restraint. In time, the ribbons would give way to gowns and the boots to polished shoes, but the lessons of the nursery endured. Boys carried their training into public life, learning to rule with composure. Girls carried theirs into drawing rooms, learning to guide with grace. Behind both paths lay the same silent creed, that duty, not desire, shaped one's destiny. And so, the nursery stood as the first classroom of identity, a quiet stage where the roles of men and women were rehearsed beneath the gentle watch of nannies and governesses, each believing they were raising not just children, but the very image of Victorian order itself. In the serene and structured halls of the Victorian home, silence was not merely expected, it was cultivated. The phrase, "children should be seen and not heard," echoed through parlors and nurseries alike, a rule repeated so often it became a rhythm of life. To modern ears, it may sound harsh, but to the Victorians, silence was a virtue, a mark of good breeding, obedience, and self-control. Children learned early that their voices were not yet meant for conversation but for response. They spoke when spoken to, answered with precision, and knew instinctively when to withdraw into quiet observation. During family gatherings, they might stand by their mother's chair, hands clasped, eyes lowered, listening to the murmurs of adult conversation without interruption. To be silent was to show respect, to speak without invitation was a breach of decorum. In the nursery, the lessons were the same but gentler. Nannies and governesses taught through example, communicating more through tone and gesture than through loud instruction. A lifted eyebrow, a small nod, or a moment of stillness carried more meaning than a dozen words. Children began to understand the unspoken language of the household, when quiet was required, when movement must stop, when thought should replace speech. Silence became its own form of communication. For many, this restraint bred an inner life, a habit of imagination and observation. Deprived of noise, children listened more closely to the world around them. They noticed the creak of a staircase, the ticking of a clock, the whisper of fabric as their mother passed by. Within their minds, they built stories, reflections, and secret dreams, small inner worlds born from the hush of their surroundings. Silence, though imposed, became fertile ground for contemplation. Of course, there were moments of rebellion, a burst of laughter that escaped at the wrong time, a whispered secret shared beneath the governess's gaze. These small cracks in the quiet revealed what discipline could not entirely suppress, the natural energy of youth. And yet, even these moments were fleeting, absorbed quickly back into the calm order of the household, as if the walls themselves demanded serenity. To the Victorians, silence was not absence but refinement, a sign that the child was learning self-mastery. A quiet child was seen as thoughtful, well-raised, and promising. Noise, by contrast, was disorder made audible. Thus, silence became the first lesson of maturity, to hold one's words, to measure one's impulses, to understand that composure was the highest form of grace. And yet, within that silence lingered love, not loud, not declared, but steady and present. It could be felt in the gentle placing of a blanket, the soft goodnight at the nursery door, the faint smile that said, "You have done well today." For in the Victorian home, affection did not need to be spoken, it was understood in the quiet, the same quiet that shaped their days, their manners, and their memories. In the Victorian calendar, holidays were not escapes from order but extensions of it. Even celebration, in those polished drawing rooms and candlelit parlors, followed the same rules of restraint that governed every other day of the year. Joy was welcome, yes, but only if it wore the proper attire, quiet smiles instead of laughter, measured gratitude instead of unguarded glee. For children, the holidays were a season of anticipation wrapped in rules. Christmas morning, perhaps the most awaited of all, began not with wild excitement but with whispered reverence. They descended the staircase in neat lines, supervised by nannies, their slippers silent against the polished floor. The tree, a proud symbol of festivity, stood adorned with candles, ribbons, and hand-carved ornaments. It was beautiful, but even beauty demanded composure. Before touching a single gift, prayers were said, greetings exchanged, and manners carefully maintained. Every gesture was watched, every reaction weighed. Gratitude was expected to be calm and polite, no matter how small or grand the gift. A true lady or gentleman shows delight with grace, a governess might remind softly. Laughter was permitted, but only in moderation. Running about or tearing into presents without care was considered uncouth, a sign of weak upbringing. Even in joy, there was duty. Meals during holidays carried the same quiet dignity. The table gleamed with silverware, and each course was served in proper sequence. Children sat at their own smaller table or at the edge of the grand one, mimicking the posture and manners of adults. Every bite was to be taken properly, every "thank you" spoken clearly. Even treats, sugared fruits, plum pudding, or delicate cakes, were enjoyed with restraint, as though too much delight might upset the delicate balance of civility. Yet behind all the etiquette, warmth flickered quietly. A softened glance from a father, a rare touch on the shoulder, or a whispered compliment from a mother, these were the real gifts, hidden among the silver spoons and starched napkins. For all its rules, the Victorian holiday carried an undercurrent of affection, expressed through formality, wrapped in composure. When the evening came, and the candles burned low, the house returned to stillness. The laughter of the day, faint and controlled, faded into the crackle of the fire. Children were led to bed with whispered goodnights, their minds filled with memories of beauty and order, of joy that never shouted, and love that never needed to. In the Victorian home, even happiness had manners. Joy bowed before decorum, and celebration was never wild, only graceful, deliberate, and quietly enduring. It was a world that believed even delight, when properly tempered, could teach discipline, gratitude, and grace. Illness, in the Victorian home, arrived like an unwelcome guest, quietly, cautiously, and always with a sense of solemn duty. A child's cough, a fevered cheek, or a restless night would stir the household into gentle motion. Yet even in sickness, restraint ruled. There were no hurried voices, no frantic gestures. Care was conducted with calm hands and whispered instructions, as though noise itself might worsen the ailment. The nursery would change in subtle ways when a child fell ill. Curtains were drawn halfway to soften the light, the ticking clock muffled under a folded cloth, and the air scented faintly of camphor or lavender water. The governess would move quietly about, preparing warm compresses, or mixing soothing draughts in porcelain cups. Mothers, though rarely the primary caregivers, would visit often, their presence soft but formal, to check on progress and to leave a word of encouragement, or a cool hand upon the forehead. Victorian remedies reflected the beliefs of their age, equal parts science, superstition, and moral instruction. A child's constitution was thought to depend not only on the body, but on the spirit, on obedience, temperance, and calm. Chamomile tea, cod liver oil, and thick syrups of honey and lemon were given to soothe, while mustard plasters, leeches, or tonics of dubious composition might accompany the more serious cures. The body, they believed, must be purged, purified, and strengthened through trial. Rest was prescribed not as indulgence but as duty. The child was expected to lie still, to recover with grace, and to accept treatment without complaint. Nannies read softly from moral storybooks, the kind that mixed comfort with lesson, tales of patience, gratitude, and courage in adversity. Even in illness, education continued, not through recitation, but through endurance. Bravery, a governess might whisper, is the quietest form of strength. There was tenderness, though often hidden beneath the starch of formality. The way a blanket was tucked just so, or a cup cooled before being offered, these were the quiet gestures of care that replaced open affection. Fathers might pause at the nursery door, listening to the shallow breaths within, offering a wordless prayer before returning to the study. Love existed, but it was clothed in composure, wrapped in ritual. When recovery came, it was met not with exuberance but gratitude. The first steps from bed, the return to lessons, the light meal taken without discomfort, each was celebrated with calm approval. "You have done well," the governess would say, and that was praise enough. Illness was seen not merely as misfortune, but as opportunity, a lesson in endurance, a reminder of fragility, and a quiet reaffirmation of discipline and care. And when night returned, the house would settle once more into its familiar rhythm. The faint scent of liniment would linger in the nursery air, the pillows still cool from convalescence. The child, now sleeping peacefully, would drift into dreams of soft voices and careful hands, tended, watched, and loved in that distinctly Victorian way, silently, steadfastly, and with unwavering decorum. In the ordered rhythm of the Victorian home, idleness was not merely frowned upon, it was feared. To be idle was to invite weakness, both of body and of character. Time, they believed, was a moral substance, and to waste it was to squander virtue itself. Even childhood, that fleeting realm of wonder, was expected to be filled, not with aimless play, but with purpose. Every hour, every minute, found its place within a quiet choreography of discipline. From dawn to dusk, the day unfolded with precision. Mornings began with lessons, reading, arithmetic, and the careful recitation of moral verse. Afternoons brought writing practice, needlework for girls, or measured walks for boys, each designed to strengthen both will and posture. Even recreation had its schedule, drawing, piano, or supervised reading. The day was a ladder of improvement, and every rung was meant to lift the child closer to virtue. To sit idly staring from a window or daydream too long was gently corrected. "Find your hands something to do," a governess might say, her tone calm but firm. For the Victorians, a still body implied a wandering mind, a dangerous indulgence that could invite moral decay. Industry, in their eyes, was the twin of integrity. A child who kept busy would grow upright and honorable, one who lingered in idleness risked temptation, frivolity, or worse, self-reflection that strayed beyond the bounds of obedience. Even leisure carried expectation. Reading was encouraged, but only from approved books, those that instructed rather than excited. Drawing was welcomed, so long as it was modest and refined. Toys, when permitted, served a purpose, a puzzle to sharpen logic, a model to teach patience. Free time, as we understand it now, scarcely existed. Childhood was not to be escaped from, but shaped, polished into order like the silver that gleamed on the family table. And yet, within the folds of this structure, small moments of stillness survived. A child might pause in the garden, watching dust dance in sunlight, or linger by the nursery fire, lost in thought before being gently recalled to duty. These secret moments of idleness, unspoken, unnoticed, were where imagination quietly bloomed. Though the Victorians could not see it, their rigid schedules often gave birth to the very creativity they sought to control. To them, the avoidance of idleness was an act of love, a way to protect, to prepare, to instill purpose in fragile years. They believed that a well-filled day led to a peaceful mind, and that structure guarded innocence from corruption. But beneath that conviction lay a deep and tender fear, that the quiet spaces between tasks might reveal too much of the child's heart, too much longing, too much freedom, too much self. And so, they filled the hours, gently and thoroughly, until even rest became an achievement. The nursery clock ticked on, steady and certain, marking time not wasted but contained. And in that steady ticking, amid needlework and Latin recitations, another kind of silence was born, the silence of a generation taught to measure even their dreams by the clock's calm hand. When night fell upon the Victorian nursery, it did not arrive with warmth or storybooks, it came with routine, precision, and a hush that seemed to echo through the corridors. The hour of bedtime was not a tender ceremony but a ritual of order, carried out with the same calm certainty as every other part of the day. The nursery lamps were dimmed one by one, the last glow of fire carefully banked, and the soft rustle of nightclothes filled the stillness like a lullaby sung by silence itself. Children were prepared for bed not with affection but with duty. Hands were washed, faces cooled, and prayers recited in voices barely above whispers. "Now you may rest," the governess would murmur, drawing the curtains with slow, practiced grace. The room fell into shadow, the lace canopy above each bed trembling faintly in the breath of the night air. Even the dolls and rocking horses seemed to bow into silence, as if acknowledging the solemnity of sleep. But bedtime in the Victorian home carried its own quiet tension. Shadows stretched long across the walls, and the creaks of old wood sounded louder when all else was still. Children lay motionless beneath stiff sheets, trained not to speak once the lights were out. Good children sleep without fuss, they were told. Only restless hearts keep the others awake. And so they learned to keep their fears folded within them, the fear of darkness, of unseen shapes, of stories half-whispered by older siblings when nannies weren't listening. There were warnings too, gentle but firm, murmured just before the door closed for the night: lie still, and don't call out. Close your eyes and think of good things. The watchful angels see when you disobey. These words were meant to soothe, but they carried the faint chill of discipline. The Victorians believed even dreams should be proper, that the mind, like the body, must rest in order. To toss or turn was to betray inner mischief, and so sleep itself became an act of obedience. Yet behind that discipline lingered something softer, a love too shy to show itself in daylight. Sometimes, after all was quiet, a mother might tiptoe in, her silk gown whispering over the floorboards, and place a hand lightly on her child's forehead. She would not wake them, she would only look, her face pale in the candlelight, her heart both full and aching. Then she would turn away, leaving behind the faint scent of lavender and longing. In that small, unseen moment lay the truth of the Victorian nursery, that affection, though hidden, was never absent. It lived between the rules, in the pauses between "lights out" and "good night," in the quiet space where love could only exist as a gesture, never a word. And so the children slept, or tried to, beneath watchful eyes, of nannies, of angels, of the ticking clock that never stopped. Outside, the gas lamps flickered through the fog, and somewhere, in the heart of the great quiet house, the faintest whisper of a lullaby, unspoken, unheard, drifted through the dark. In the Victorian nursery, toys were never just playthings, they were lessons in miniature, reflections of values wrapped in lace and varnish. To a modern eye, they might seem stiff or joyless, but to those who lived within that age of order, toys carried moral weight. They were chosen carefully, displayed proudly, and handled with restraint, for even in play, a child's virtue was expected to shine through. The nursery shelves gleamed with wooden soldiers, porcelain dolls, spinning tops, and tiny tea sets, all symbols of discipline and decorum. Boys were given toys that taught bravery, duty, and control, miniature cannons, model ships, and puzzles to sharpen the mind. Girls were offered gentler amusements, dolls to nurture, embroidery kits to teach patience, and dollhouses where tidiness was its own reward. Every object whispered a quiet instruction: be good, be calm, be proper. Not every toy was welcomed. Anything that suggested chaos, noisy drums, wild games, or toys that dirtied the hands, was quietly discouraged. Dolls must not be torn or scuffed, toy soldiers must stand in their ranks. Even laughter during play was expected to stay within bounds. Too loud, and the governess would remind them that a true lady's joy is quiet. The nursery was not a playground, it was a rehearsal hall for the composure of adulthood. Yet despite these rules, the children found ways to make magic. A broken spinning top could become a treasure, a bit of ribbon a river for their dolls to cross. Beneath the eyes of nannies and portraits, imagination slipped through the cracks of order like sunlight between heavy drapes. A forbidden giggle, a secret story whispered between siblings under the table, became acts of quiet rebellion, small, bright sparks of freedom hidden inside obedience. The Victorians believed that play must prepare the soul, not indulge it. Toys were meant to build restraint, to guide the child toward grace and self-control. To them, a toy was not for escape but for refinement, a tool to mold the heart, just as lessons shaped the mind. And so, each item in the nursery held its place like a symbol of moral architecture, the doll as a mother's shadow, the soldier as a father's echo, the puzzle as the child's patient trial. But as night fell and the rules softened with the fading light, the toys became something else, companions of solitude, silent witnesses to unspoken dreams. The porcelain dolls, once stern in daylight, seemed kinder by candlelight. The soldiers, still in their ranks, guarded the room with quiet loyalty. And though no one said it aloud, the children loved them not for what they taught, but for the comfort they gave in a world of whispered rules. For in those delicate toys, fragile, polished, and endlessly watched, lived the tender heart of Victorian childhood, an innocence bound by order, yet endlessly reaching for wonder. In the grand symmetry of the Victorian household, affection often traveled not by touch or voice, but by paper. Mothers who spent their days in drawing rooms or at social calls sent their love to the nursery through carefully folded letters, written in graceful ink and sealed with quiet longing. The written word became their bridge, a tender substitute for the lullabies they did not sing, for the embraces they rarely gave. Each note was an act of ritual. The handwriting was neat, the tone measured, the sentiment wrapped in restraint. "My dearest child," a letter might begin, followed by lines of advice, moral encouragement, or a reminder to mind your governess and stand upright. Sometimes, at the very end, a single phrase escaped the discipline of the page, "I think of you often." That sentence, brief and trembling, carried more warmth than all the etiquette it followed. For many Victorian mothers, to write was to love safely, at a distance. They were told that too much affection might spoil a child, that indulgence weakened moral fiber. So they expressed their tenderness in letters, their ink-carrying emotions they dared not show aloud. A mother might write while the house slept, candle flickering beside her, every word carefully chosen so that her affection remained proper, never overflowing, never raw. Children, too, were taught to write back. Under the watchful eye of their governess, they learned the delicate art of correspondence, thanking their parents for gifts, reporting on lessons, and promising obedience. The letters were formal, stilted, almost adult in tone. Yet between the lines, one could sense the small voice of childhood, trying to reach through the manners. "I am being good, I miss you, please come soon." These exchanges became the invisible thread that held the family together. The mother's letters rested in a box beside the nursery desk, read again and again when loneliness crept in. They were treasures of a quiet love that wore gloves and spoke in complete sentences. In a world where emotions were restrained, writing was the one place they could breathe. And perhaps, in those written moments, a mother felt closer to her child than she ever did in person. Her ink could tremble, her words could sigh, her heart could whisper what her lips could not say. The paper carried what propriety forbade, a pulse of human tenderness beneath the lace of manners. Long after the children grew and left their nurseries, many kept those letters, yellowed and soft at the edges, like pressed flowers between pages. They were not simply words, they were echoes of a love that dared not speak, yet endured quietly across distance and time. In the hush of the Victorian home, where silence was discipline and affection a duty, a mother's letter was more than a message, it was her voice, fragile and eternal, whispering through the folds of paper, "My dear one. I am here, even if I cannot say it aloud." In the quiet heart of the Victorian nursery, stories were not escapes, they were instructions. Books sat neatly on the shelf beside the Bible and the alphabet primer, each chosen with great care, each carrying the soft weight of morality. To read was to learn, to absorb the shape of virtue and the danger of sin, one gentle parable at a time. Every page whispered the same message: be good, be still, be kind, but never too free. The stories of that age were not wild or reckless. They did not tempt children into dreams of adventure or rebellion. Instead, they taught obedience through fable, little girls who disobeyed their mothers and caught fevers, boys who lied and met tragic ends, or selfish children who learned humility through sorrow. The words were sweet, but their roots ran deep with caution. Even bedtime tales came wrapped in quiet warnings, as if goodness itself were a fragile flame that must be guarded from mischief and imagination. A governess would often read aloud by candlelight, her voice soft and steady, letting the story unfold like a sermon disguised as a lullaby. The children listened, eyes wide, hands folded, hearts fluttering between curiosity and guilt. When the tale ended, there was no applause, no laughter, only reflection. "Do you see, my dear," she might say, closing the book, "how virtue rewards the patient?" And the lesson, delivered without harshness, settled in their minds like dust on polished wood. Yet not all of these stories were without warmth. Some held tenderness beneath their structure, a sense that goodness, though demanded, could also be gentle. Books like The Daisy Chain or A Peep Behind the Scenes carried sorrow, but also hope. They spoke of forgiveness, of faith, of love that endures even in restraint. For the Victorians, chastisement did not always mean cruelty. It was believed that a well-told story could correct the heart more effectively than punishment ever could. Still, behind those carefully chosen words, something else stirred, the quiet ache of childhood imagination. While adults praised the moral of the tale, children often dreamed beyond it. The disobedient girl who wandered into the woods, they wondered what she saw before she was found. The lonely boy who prayed for forgiveness, they imagined him forgiven by something greater than rules. In the pauses between sentences, their minds built secret worlds, untamed by virtue, untouched by duty. Victorian literature tried to teach goodness, but it also sparked longing. It planted seeds of empathy, wonder, and quiet rebellion, the very things it sought to contain. The children learned their lessons, yes, but they also learned to dream softly, silently, under the heavy gaze of morality. And in that strange balance, between obedience and imagination, the soul of the Victorian child was formed, disciplined, delicate, yet filled with secret light. For even in tales meant to chasten, the whisper of story itself could not help but free them, if only for a moment, as the last candle dimmed and the governess's voice faded into silence. In the disciplined rhythm of Victorian childhood, social visits were not occasions of freedom or laughter, they were quiet performances, rehearsals for the stage of adulthood. To visit, or to receive visitors, was to step into the great choreography of manners that defined one's place in the world. Even the youngest child, dressed in ribbons or miniature waistcoats, was expected to understand the delicate art of composure. A visit began long before the guests arrived. The nursery became a place of whispered reminders and final lessons. Do not interrupt. Hands folded, feet still. Speak when spoken to, but softly. A governess would smooth a wrinkle on a sleeve, straighten a collar, and give a nod that carried centuries of etiquette. To the Victorian eye, manners were not decoration, they were identity, proof of breeding, of restraint, of self-mastery. When the drawing room door opened, the world changed. The child entered, guided by the steady hand of the nanny or mother, and stood near the tea table, poised, silent, observing. Conversations flowed above their heads like distant rivers, the weather, the parish, the moral state of the nation. If addressed, the child curtsied or bowed, answered politely, and returned to silence. Their small presence was both ornamental and symbolic, a living portrait of discipline. Even playdates, when allowed, carried the same quiet scrutiny. No tumbling laughter, no muddy shoes, no raised voices. The games were gentle, card sets, embroidery, polite puzzles. The goal was not amusement but refinement, to learn how to be agreeable without being loud, how to smile without presumption, how to move without haste. Every gesture, every glance, every word was a mirror of the home's values. And yet, beneath this layer of grace, small rebellions flickered like hidden embers. A mischievous glance across the table. A secret giggle between two girls in lace. A boy tapping his polished boot against the floor in silent protest. They knew the rules by heart, but within those rules, they found their own secret rhythm, a private joy in the midst of control. To the Victorians, poise was not simply posture, it was a moral stance. It showed one's capacity to endure stillness, to contain feeling, to live gracefully within boundaries. Children learned to wear composure like another layer of clothing, to stand perfectly still while longing to run barefoot through the grass outside. When the visit ended and the guests departed, a soft sigh often swept through the nursery. The gloves came off, the shoes loosened, the smiles faded. The governess might say, "Well done," and for a moment, the children felt the rare warmth of approval, a sweetness found only in obedience well performed. In those visits, they learned more than manners. They learned the art of the mask, how to appear calm when the heart trembled, how to carry silence with grace. It was a lesson that would follow them into adulthood, where every room was a stage, and every gesture, a line in the quiet play of life. The rhythm of the Victorian nursery followed not only the clock, but the turning of the seasons. The year unfolded in a slow choreography of adaptation, winter bringing order and indoor discipline, summer offering sunlight filtered through layers of restraint. Childhood was shaped not by freedom but by adjustment, by learning how to behave differently beneath each sky. In winter, the house itself seemed to hold its breath. The air was sharp, the windows steamed with frost, and the nursery fire crackled like a small heartbeat against the cold. Days were shorter, lessons longer, and movement quieter. Children were wrapped in wool and rules, every moment enclosed, controlled, made proper. Indoor amusements replaced the garden, drawing, reading aloud, embroidery, or moral instruction by the fire's glow. Outside, snow might fall in perfect silence, but inside, the order of the household never softened. Play, when permitted, was careful and contained. A wooden hoop rolled down the corridor, a doll's tea was arranged with precision. The governess watched, knitting in her chair, the steady click of her needles marking the rhythm of obedience. Even joy had to be tidy in winter, laughter subdued, footsteps light. To run or shout in such weather was not only impolite, it was dangerous. The cold, Victorians believed, could seize the lungs, and overexcitement weakened the constitution. Health itself was a form of discipline. Then came summer, bright but never wild. The nursery windows opened to the scent of grass and roses, yet freedom still carried limits. The children were allowed the garden, but only beneath supervision, and only at set hours. Parasols, gloves, and hats kept the sunlight at bay, sunburn was unseemly, freckles a mark of neglect. Girls strolled with books, boys played cricket under quiet instruction, and even in the soft hum of bees and warmth, the rules held firm. The season might soften the air, but not the expectations. Summer also meant travel, to the seaside or countryside, where routines were gently rewritten but never abandoned. Lessons continued, prayers were said, manners upheld. Even in the sound of waves or rustling fields, the echo of the nursery followed them. Freedom existed only in glimpses, the thrill of sand between gloved fingers, the secret joy of slipping shoes off beneath a picnic blanket, the silent wonder of feeling the sun without permission. To the Victorians, seasons were moral teachers. Winter taught endurance, summer taught restraint. Spring encouraged renewal, but always within bounds, autumn reminded them of order's return. The weather changed, the light shifted, but the child's duty remained steady, to behave beautifully, no matter the sky. And yet, in those rare moments between the rules, in the hush of snow light or the shimmer of heat through curtains, something softer lived. The faint scent of lilacs carried through the house, the memory of sunlight caught in the hair of a child leaning too close to the window. Small fragments of freedom, tucked quietly inside the rhythm of control. The seasons passed, as they always did, marked not by joy or rebellion, but by quiet adaptation. And the children, so carefully trained to adjust, learned the most Victorian lesson of all, how to bend gently with time, never breaking, only curving like ivy toward the light that waited beyond the windowpane. In the grand houses of the Victorian age, love was often a duty assigned to others. Mothers, bound by the quiet elegance of society, rarely lingered in the nursery. Fathers, absorbed in their offices or libraries, remained distant figures glimpsed at dinner or in portraits. And so, affection, that tender, unpredictable thing, was carefully managed, distributed, and delegated. The heart of the home beat not in the drawing room, but in the hands of those paid to care. The governess stood at the center of this delicate arrangement. Neither family nor servant, she occupied a strange, silent middle ground. Her world was one of control of lessons, of manners, of emotion itself. Her affection had to be balanced, proper, never too warm nor too cold. She could comfort a frightened child, but only briefly, she could praise, but sparingly. Love, for her, was measured like medicine, given in small, respectable doses. Beneath her composure, however, often lay a deep loneliness. Many governesses had left their own families to serve in others' homes, and the children they taught became shadows of the love they could never claim. To a child, she might seem distant, a figure of rules and correction, yet behind every gentle reprimand was a flicker of devotion she dared not name. When a child clutched her hand or looked to her for comfort, the moment passed quickly, quietly, as if affection itself might offend the house's order. Alongside the governess came the visiting nurse, a woman of care rather than education, summoned when illness touched the nursery. Her presence brought a different kind of tenderness, one that smelled faintly of lavender and medicine. Unlike the governess, she was allowed warmth. She could smooth a brow, sing a soft tune, linger by the bedside until fever broke. For many children, the nurse's touch was the first real gentleness they ever knew, the kind that didn't ask for silence in return. Between these women, the governess and the nurse, the Victorian child lived a life of borrowed affection. They learned to receive care without claiming it, to feel love through the hands of those who must not call it love. When the nurse left and the governess returned, the air changed, tenderness replaced once again by composure. And so the rhythm continued, order by day, comfort by night, each emotion confined to its proper hour. Parents, of course, believed this arrangement to be kind. They thought it ensured the child's moral growth and proper upbringing, love disciplined by decorum. Yet within that structure, small hearts learned restraint far too early. They learned to whisper instead of cry, to write gratitude instead of longing. Their tenderness, like their toys and lessons, was something to be managed. And still, in the quiet between rules, affection bloomed in secret. A governess tucking a blanket too gently, a nurse humming after the lights were out, a child leaving a drawing at a servant's door, all tiny rebellions against the architecture of emotional distance. The Victorian home may have outsourced affection, but it could never extinguish it. Love found its way through corridors and closed doors, soft and persistent, like the scent of roses creeping in from the garden, unseen, but always there. In Victorian society, a child was never simply a child, they were a reflection, a living portrait of the family's reputation polished into manners and restraint. Every gesture, every word, every glance held meaning. To behave correctly in public was not a personal virtue, it was an act of representation. A child's silence could honor generations. A single tear, if seen at the wrong time, could bring quiet shame. The world outside the nursery was vast and watching. Church, promenades, garden parties, and dinners, each gathering was a silent test of upbringing. The rules were unspoken but absolute, no fidgeting, no questions, no signs of hunger, no visible emotion beyond mild contentment. A well-trained child stood beside their parents like a carefully framed painting, polished, admired, and perfectly still. Public appearances were rehearsed long before the first outing. The governess instructed the proper posture, the right tone of voice, the exact bow or curtsy to offer. Do not meet their eyes for too long, she might whisper, and never, ever interrupt. Every movement was a lesson in invisibility. The less noticed a child was, the more they were praised afterward. So well behaved, guests would murmur approvingly. And beneath those words, the parents felt their pride affirmed, as if virtue itself had been displayed like fine china. But for the children, these outings were quiet trials. To be still while joy flickered through the park beyond the carriage window. To smile politely when their feet ached from standing. To swallow curiosity and laughter alike. Their faces became masks, delicate, composed, and unreadable. They were learning, from the earliest age, that self-control was not just expected, it was survival. Even a small misstep, a giggle during a sermon, a question spoken too loudly, could draw the cool weight of parental disapproval. Discipline was rarely harsh in public, it did not need to be. A glance, a tightened jaw, a hand on the shoulder, these silent corrections spoke volumes. The child would blush, fall silent, and the lesson would settle deep. Shame, after all, was the most efficient teacher. And yet, within these moments of restraint, love still lingered, disguised as pride. Parents believed that shaping composure was an act of care, a way to prepare their children for the hardness of the world. They thought discipline built dignity, that dignity built opportunity, and that opportunity built safety. To them, public silence was not cruelty, but protection, a shield of respectability in an era that judged without mercy. But the children, though small, understood something else. They learned how to watch without speaking, how to feel without showing, how to carry tenderness beneath a surface of calm. They became mirrors of the society that made them, graceful on the outside, restless within. When they returned home, released from public gaze, even the loosening of a collar or the kick of a shoe beneath the table felt like rebellion. The laughter that slipped out then, brief, bright, unguarded, was their truest sound. In the end, every Victorian child learned to live between two selves, the one displayed for the world's approval, and the one hidden quietly inside, waiting for the moment when no one was watching. In the soft-lit parlors and still corridors of the Victorian home, politeness was more than a virtue, it was law. A law carved into tone, posture, and even breath. To be polite was to belong. To falter, even slightly, was to invite correction, not always in words but in looks, the kind that cooled the skin and silenced the heart. Children were praised for being agreeable, mild, obedient, for smiling when spoken to, and never when not. They learned early that emotions were dangerous things: laughter too loud, tears too long, anger too sharp. Each feeling had to be wrapped, softened, and tucked away beneath layers of manners. The cost of this was subtle, invisible, but it gathered quietly, like dust in a locked room. Desire, curiosity, affection, these two were polished away until they gleamed faintly beneath the surface, controlled and contained. When a child wanted to run barefoot across the wet grass, they instead folded their hands and waited for permission that never came. When they longed to cry after a scolding, they smiled instead. Even happiness was tempered, joy had to be modest, never overwhelming. A polite child was one who could swallow their own voice. Think before you speak became feel before you show, and then, eventually, do not feel at all. And so, they learned the delicate art of internal silence. Their faces were calm, their gestures graceful, their words perfectly measured, but inside, small storms gathered. There were moments, rare and fleeting, when those storms broke through: a sudden laugh in the garden, a shout during play, a tear that slipped free before it could be hidden. In those moments, they tasted freedom, raw and startling. But soon enough, a voice, gentle, disappointed, would restore the order. "Compose yourself, darling." And so, they would. The Victorians believed that politeness built character. That control was nobility, that restraint was beauty. But the children who grew within that ideal carried something unspoken, the ache of all they never said. In adulthood, their smiles remained lovely but careful, their laughter timed, their affection restrained. They became masters of grace and strangers to themselves. Behind every "yes, mama," and "thank you, sir," there lived a quiet rebellion, a wish to be seen, to be known not for their manners, but for their hearts. That wish never left them. It simply learned to whisper. Adolescence in the Victorian home was not a season of rebellion, as it might be today. It was, rather, a change of costume, one restraint exchanged for another, the nursery's rules replaced by society's expectations. For boys, the door to the wider world opened a crack. For girls, it often closed a little tighter. The transformation began quietly. A longer dress, a firmer handshake, a new tone in how one was addressed. Miss, master, small words that carried weight. The nursery was left behind, but not forgotten, it lingered like the scent of lavender in folded linens. The lessons of composure and obedience followed closely, stitched into posture and manner like invisible thread. For boys, there came the call to discipline of another kind, schools that demanded endurance, courage, control. They were taught to lead, to labor, to suppress softness. Affection was replaced with ambition, curiosity with duty. Every mistake was a chance for correction, every success a quiet expectation to do better next time. For girls, adolescence arrived with lace and limitation. They were trained not for freedom but for grace, to walk lightly, to smile without eagerness, to speak with measured sweetness. The governess still hovered, though now more as shadow than guard. Books on refinement replaced fairy tales, and the lessons of gentleness grew heavier, denser, as though the very air they breathed became made of rules. And yet, somewhere beneath that rigid surface, something stirred, a trembling sense of self, soft and frightened. It was the first whisper of individuality. A girl's private thought, written secretly in a diary. A boy's silent question about why he must never cry. These were small rebellions, internal, invisible, but real. For some, adolescence offered a gentle loosening, walks in the garden unaccompanied, books read for pleasure rather than improvement, music played not for lessons but for feeling. For others, it only deepened the weight of expectation. They became living portraits, perfect, polite, and inwardly muted. In those years of half freedom, half restraint, the soul learned to balance between desire and decorum. Some found beauty in that balance. Others found only quiet sadness, a sense that they were never quite allowed to be themselves. And when they grew into adulthood, many carried that stillness with them, like a tightly bound ribbon, invisible yet inescapable. It was the mark of their time, their upbringing, their world, a world that feared the noise of emotion more than the silence of the heart. Long after the lamps of the Victorian age were dimmed and its parlors emptied, something of its silence remained. It echoed through generations, in the careful tone of a parent's voice, in the unspoken expectations at a dinner table, in the way affection was given only when deserved. The nursery might have changed, but its ghosts lingered. The children who once learned to sit straight and speak softly grew into adults who did the same, now to their own children. They had inherited not toys or heirlooms, but habits of the heart, restraint, order, and the quiet ache of distance. They loved, but carefully. They guided, but rarely embraced. Even when the world beyond them softened, when laughter grew freer, when affection became less forbidden, a part of them still flinched at too much warmth. They built homes filled with comfort, yet carried the discipline of cold corridors within them. A mother might read bedtime stories now instead of writing letters, yet still pause before saying I love you, as though the words might spill too fast. A father might smile at his son's noise, but still measure pride against propriety. The Victorian voice whispered still, control, control, always control. But love has its own persistence. Slowly, through time, through tenderness rediscovered, the silence began to fade. The descendants of those quiet nurseries started to unlearn the lessons of politeness at all cost. They began to see that gentleness could exist without distance, that affection need not ruin a child's character, but could instead strengthen it. And yet, in moments of quiet, when the world goes still, that old rhythm returns. The soft reminder to behave, to measure emotion, to tidy one's heart before showing it. It is a ghost, not cruel, just habitual. A fragment of an age that prized composure over comfort. The legacy of the silent nursery is not easily erased. It lives in the polite smile that hides exhaustion, in the formal apology that replaces tears, in the faint hesitation before a hug. But it also lives in our awareness, in the recognition that we can choose differently. For perhaps the truest inheritance of the Victorian child is not their silence, but their endurance, their ability to hold emotion quietly, to feel deeply even when the world told them not to. And from that endurance, new generations have learned a gentler lesson. That love, once silent, can still find its voice. In the hush of the Victorian nursery, where silence ruled and order reigned, there was still love, quiet, hidden, and shy. It was not the love of laughter or embraces, but of careful glances and softened voices. It lived in the way a nanny tucked a blanket a little tighter, or how a mother's letter carried one trembling word too tender for the time. Behind every rule, behind every curtain of restraint, there was feeling, pressed flat but never gone. It is easy to think of that age as cold, and perhaps it was, on the surface. Yet beneath the layers of lace and discipline, hearts beat the same way they do now. Parents feared for their children's futures. Children longed for their parents' touch. Love existed there, bound by etiquette, wrapped in silence, but steady, always steady. The Victorians believed they were doing right, that restraint protected innocence, that manners guarded morality. They mistook stillness for safety, but their intentions, however misguided, were born of care. Their love had to hide behind the rules, yet it glowed faintly through them, like candlelight seen through heavy drapes. And though centuries have passed, that candlelight remains, its glow reaching us through the soft corridors of history. We can still feel it in the tenderness between generations, in the small moments when affection hesitates before it speaks. The silence they left behind became a lesson, a reminder that love, even when quiet, is still love. Perhaps that is the truest legacy of the silent nursery, that love endures, even when unspoken. That care can survive beneath discipline, and affection can whisper through centuries of rules. And so, as the last echoes of that old house fade into the night, we can close our eyes knowing, behind every good manners child, there once lingered a softer truth, one never said aloud but always felt. I love you, even if I don't say it.